Back to the studio and speak to Sean Michael Cox. He's the Director of Academic Affairs and International Programs at Bahcesehir University here in Istanbul. Thank you very much indeed for coming in so early in the morning. The State of the Union is the perfect opportunity for the President to say, this is what I've done in the past year, these are my administration's achievements. Donald Trump particularly proud of what he's done for the American economy, and he has a right to be, doesn't he?
To a certain extent, he does. Economies don't change within 1 year or even one presidency necessarily. Some of the success that he is reaping from a strong U.S. economy actually began in the Obama administration, and some of it has happened due to the tax cuts that caused a bump in production and activity in the U.S. economy over the past year, although we're starting to see a slowdown of that. So is it a success? To a certain extent, yes, but it's not completely his success.
How much is he now going to be stymied by the fact that the Democrats control the House of Representatives? How much was that reflected in this speech, do you think, compared to what he's previously said? With people who don't agree with him, he can be really quite firm, is a kind way of putting it, maybe.
Well, while he was making calls for bipartisanship and moving forward, in listing the successes of the past year, all of the successes were Republican successes, with the exception of one, and that was prison and sentencing reform. So it's likely that what he will define as successes going forward will be programs that will be challenged by the Democratic majority in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, it was interesting. Even the Democrats stood up when he talked about prison and sentencing reforms, and they applauded him, which didn't happen very often.
Exactly.
Now, what about this issue of what's happening on the southern border? Because his intelligence chiefs, they refuse to categorize that as a security matter for the United States. He continues to go on about it. There's something that he's appealing to his base. That's absolutely clear. The figures that he talks about illegal people coming into the country, undocumented migrants, about the number of drugs coming in. The DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency itself, says that 90% of the country's heroin, yes, it does come from Mexico, but most of it comes through legal ports of entry. How is he going to win this argument?
This is actually a very interesting situation because in his speech, he talked about his position on illegal immigration and the crisis at the border. But then towards the end of the speech, he also said that we want America to be a country that welcomes more immigrants at any time in its history as well. So at the beginning, he was playing to his base, but he was sort of conciliatory at the end, trying to reach out and give an olive branch to the Democrats because they're actually down to 10 days now before the next potential government shutdown, and they need to make some progress. So he's trying to play both sides of the field. At least that was the impression I got from listening to him during the speech.
You know, if there was a conciliatory tone in terms of the domestic policies and appealing to the Democrats to work with him, in terms of foreign policy, it seemed as if his position was quite aggressive. He threatened Iran. He criticized heavily Nicolas Maduro's socialist policies. He talked about the challenges that he faces in terms of bringing the troops back home, also in Afghanistan as well. Is there any way that that aggression is going to be at all watered down in the last 2 years of his presidency?
From his office, no, it will not be watered down. It may have to be compromised due to the response that he gets from the House of Representatives in particular and from the Senate, where there are Republican hawks who are concerned about U.S. security and the moves that he's taking, particularly, for example, with negotiating with the Taliban in Afghanistan, in talking with North Korea, going to the table with them. In particular, North Korea was recently sanctioned by the United Nations for violating its restrictions, and he's still planning on meeting with them. So he's taken an aggressive foreign policy that doesn't necessarily match with Republican interests in Congress as well. So he might find it challenging from both houses and both parties in Congress.
Sean, were you surprised that he didn't mention anything about the 2020 elections? Many people were expecting him to almost do a reset in terms of how he looks ahead to his possible re-election. There was one little hint. I thought it might be a little hint, but you had to kind of read between the lines, where he said that some people in the United States want us to become more socialist, and then he criticized socialism. And I thought maybe, is he having a go at Bernie Sanders there, who possibly is the first ever American politician to be a likely popular candidate who espouses that word that used to be a very dirty word in America, socialism?
I wasn't really expecting anything to address the 2020 presidential election because it's still a little bit early and we don't know who the candidates in the field are. By the next State of the Union address, we'll have a much better idea of what the Democrats Democrats will be offering, and if there's any even potential Republican primary challengers to Trump as well. So it's a little early for that.
Sean Michael Cox again. It's fairly early in the morning. Thanks a lot for coming in. Really appreciate it.